Hey, hello, welcome back, everybody. I guess it sort of depends on when you're watching this, but I'm hoping that many of you are either on spring break when watching this or getting back from spring break and had a wonderful time. If you're watching this right as it's released, I hope you guys have a good spring break. That's always one of the interesting things with these online classes where we don't have synchronous lectures. Trying to figure out how to phrase these extended times off is a little challenging. But regardless, obviously, when you're watching this, you are in the midst of a little bit of a lull in terms of assignments for this class and things that we have to do. And in fact, if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, we're not only in a little bit of a lull, but we're really coming to the finish line at this point for this particular class. Specifically, what we have left is just the rough drafts of our papers and then the final versions of the papers after you get feedback and kind of are able to clean up some of the things that either you've already submitted or you're planning to submit as we get to the end of the class. So, what we're going to be doing in this lecture today is talking about the last section that you need to write up for this paper, which is sometimes called the discussion section, sometimes called the conclusion section. Usually we call it the discussion section when you just have one particular study. Conclusions are more if you have multiple studies that you've run that you're sort of bringing together in a final paper, something that happens a lot in psychology, just definitely not for this project that we're going to be doing for this class. But regardless of what we're going to call it, what we're going to be looking at today in this lecture is simply how you summarize that stuff. And if you look at the pages that I have opened up here, I think you can see them. You'll notice there are no extra tabs for other things to be looking at because, well, what we're going to be doing with these discussion sections is sort of providing closure to all of the stuff that has happened previously. I mean, some of the discussion section that you're going to be including has already sort of been written when you started to analyze and understand your data several weeks ago in that data interpretation assignment. But some of you, maybe need to change some things or alter some stuff. So this might be brand new. Regardless of whether or not you're using that old stuff, the discussion section or conclusion section is much more than just, hey, this is what I got with the data. And that's an important thing that we want to cover in this video. More often than not, when you read these sections from people writing these papers, what you'll find is they start off by first assessing, interpreting the data, kind of putting it into context. And then after that, what they do is they tie those findings that they have to stuff that's either been covered previously or other things that they haven't had a chance to mention. We've worked on the introductions a lot so far. We've spent a lot of time really trying to understand how to talk about our topic, how to tie it to other things. And some of you are really at a point where you've got a solid thing that maybe just needs some additions. Others maybe still have a lot of refinement to go, but regardless of where you're at, when you're writing a discussion section, what a lot of this is about is building off of that introduction that you started with. So what I want to see when I'm seeing these final drafts of your paper is not only all the stuff that we've covered previously, the introduction, which is cleaned up, the abstract, which is cleaned up, the title page, which is cleaned up. Some of you actually have perfect title pages and abstracts that were phenomenal. Others definitely need to do some work on those, but I want to see all those sections again. I want to see the methods and results that we covered in our last lecture. This is going to be the heavy lifting. So hopefully, again, you've been keeping up with this and you're not trying to somehow cram that lecture into this lecture because there's a lot to those methods and results sections. So I want to see those things really detailed, and more specifically, I want to see them in APA format showing strong understanding of what it is that you did with your assessments and what you hypothetically did with your methods. This kind of just framing it in the way that you would do for a research paper moving forward. And the last big thing that we need is that discussion section, which again ties into results and the introduction that you have. Now, some individuals, when they write this discussion section, literally just lean on the resources that they've used before. If you read some articles, though, you will see some people introducing new ideas in a discussion section. They might say, we weren't expecting this, but we found these results, which sort of aligns with so and so's work on this topic, or it sort of links up with these discoveries that were found by so and so. Or maybe you could even say, hey, my sample was too small, but if I got more, I might find something that's indicative of these results. And this particular study came into that same problem, and then they expanded and they did this. That's possible when you include that in the discussion section. But the important thing is that the language within that discussion section is going to be more indicative of what your introduction section was. It's a narrative. It's a description of things. It's putting stuff into context. It's allowing the reader to understand what it was that you found and why you found it, either because of the size of the effect or the lack of a sample size or whatever you think was behind what it was that you discovered. So to have that narrative, to have that description, you need to spend some time on it. And you need to have an abundance of resources that you provide for this particular section. When you're writing about those articles that we've talked about or you've talked about previously, you want to make sure that you're again citing properly and that you're using whatever you've got for those in your reference page, which means when you're going through that last bit, the reference page, you might have to add a few things, a few items to that particular paper. I know some of you have, I've already said, you can't just have 2 articles. You need way more than that for this particular paper. 4, 5, 6 is kind of the bare bones minimum for a good paper on a specific topic. But I mean, we are talking bare bones minimum. If you're thinking about your senior thesis, most people for those papers are using 10, 15, 20 resources. If you read a journal article, somebody writing about a specific topic in those publications will often have 20, 30, 40 different resources that they're using as a part of their paper, usually again implemented within the introduction section and also, importantly for this week, in that discussion section. So what I want to see within this week's work is really an ability to tie what you found statistically to all the things that we've been covering in the other portions of the class. It's important for you to be able to do this, that you understand the data, you understand the results. It's something I've harped on a lot of times already, so I'm not going to spend too much time dwelling on it, but it's really critical that that comes across within this discussion section, and that you also, near the end of this, kind of give context to where this research might lead you. If you read other people's articles, you'll see after talking about how their work relates to everybody else's, they talk about paths forward. Something else I want to see included within this discussion section. Once you close it out, obviously you need your reference page. And if you've got tables, if you've got figures, those things should be included in their appropriate places. Reference the APA formatting stuff that we've talked about before if you need a reminder as to which goes where in the order of your paper. And the other thing that I do think is worth noting, since I've graded those rough draft paper outlines so far, is you want to, when you're presenting this rough draft, to double check APA formatting on not only spacing, but also font. Some of you oddly had like different fonts with different sections of your paper, which was a little suspicious. I don't even know what I'm suspicious of, but it seemed weird that there were those different fonts. So you want to make sure you kind of covering the right fonts for it, correct spacing. And also, you want to make sure that you have page breaks when there's supposed to be page breaks. When you get to the body of the paper, there are page breaks in those. So again, review APA formatting if you need a reminder on some of that stuff, because I'm going to want to see in these rough drafts, which is a component of your grade, that included. But in essence, what you're going to be graded for within this rough draft is mostly the stuff found in your methods and results section, and the conclusion or discussion section. But I'm going to review all of the stuff that was presented previously and sort of give you a little bit of extra credit, not extra credit, but more credit added on to the assignment grade. for you having a really sound, cleaned up other sections, which means for some of you, you just include it and boom, you get the points. For others, if there was a need for edits, this is the time to do it. To have those rough drafts completely done with all of those items included. That way, when I give you your feedback the following week, and you start working on the revised final version of your paper, you're pretty much just editing everything. You're not having to rewrite a whole bunch of stuff after this rough draft is done. Hopefully that makes sense. If you haven't necessarily gotten all the clarification you need on this, check out the assignment page before going into writing the rough draft so you can see what points you're going to get for each individual section. I'll have that up very soon. By the time you're watching this, I guarantee it'll be up. And that way, you can really have a good understanding of what's expected in this assignment. And honestly, when you get done with it, you can feel like you are in the home stretch. Unless there is egregious major issues with that rough draft that you're submitting, all you really have to do for the last 3 weeks of this class is just work on edits, work on kind of minor changes to what it is you have. We'll talk about some of those things as we progress. What a good reference page looks like overall, how you can make it a little bit better. We'll even spend a week in that final paper one talking about grad programs and jobs and why this is so unbelievably important, what you might want to be attentive to when you're working on that next project, not this one, but then one that you do in a future semester. When you're done with this week, we really are, really are at pretty much the finish line for this class. So put your best effort forward, and I promise it will pay off, not only in terms of your grade on this, but how much work you have to do moving forward and kind of how prepared you are for the remainder of your career here at Cal State East Bay. For today, I think we covered everything we need to. So thank you very much for sitting tight. Best of luck with this big, big hurdle, but I promise there's a reward at the end. And I hope to see you all for our, believe it or not, second to last video that we have for this class. All right, take care, everyone.